Just let me know when you can see my screen. Is my screen visible to you?
Yes, it is.
Great. All right, so we'll start with a short bhajan and then we'll start with our discussion for the day. So the words are very simple. It goes like Jai Radha Madhav. Radha Madhav is the name of Krishna. Kunja Bihari, someone who sports in different kunjas or gardens or forests. Gopi Jana Vallabh, he's the master of the gopis. Giravardhari, he's the lifter of Govardhan hill. Yashoda Nandan, he's the son of Mother Yashoda. Brajaja Ranjana, right? He's the apple of the eye of people of Braja. That's where he lived. Yamuna Tira Vanachari, and he enjoys, different pastimes on the bank of River Yamuna. So that's the meaning of the bhajan. We'll sing it. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Y'all can sing too. Call and response. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya
Radha Madhava
Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Jai
Gopi Jana Vallabha
Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Jaya
Gopi Jana Vallabha
Yashodanandana Vrajjana Nanjana
Yashodanandana
Brajjana
Ranjana
Yashodanandana Vrajjana Nanjana
Yashodanandana Ranjana
Ravanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Jai Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Jaya Yashodanandana Vrajjana Nanjana Yashodanandana Vrajjana Nanjana Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Right. So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining. I believe it's different time zones for a lot of people here. So, thank you so much for joining in. It's about 8 p.m. in India, and we'll be going on with this class for another hour or so. I hope that's fine with everyone. So, before we begin, I think as per tradition, we'll chant quick Mangalacharan prayers. I'll chant them, and Mangalacharan is basically to invoke auspiciousness so that we are able to better absorb the subject matter we are about to discuss. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale
Vandeham Shri Guru Shri
Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Okay. Is Dipali there from MI? Hare Krishna. Okay. All right. So let's start today's session. So I think what we can do is it'll be nice if some people can be on camera. I can see Rasa Sundari Mataji on camera. Thank you so much, Mataji, for being there, visible in front of our eyes. If others can also turn on the camera, it'll be nice. It'll be a good interactive session. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Abhay Prabhu, Ganesh Prabhu. Okay. So I think how we do this is this is actually a part of a larger Bhagavad Gita study, and the group is currently on chapter 4. So what I'll be doing is I'll be taking you all through an overview of the first 4 chapters, and then you'll be merged with the larger group who are already studying chapter 4 and onwards, like that. So I'll be taking these sessions for the entire month of Jan, probably covering the 4 chapters. So we'll try and finish 1 chapter a day as an overview, and then you can kind of connect with the other group, which is headed by Padmanayan, His Grace Padmanayan Prabhu, who will be taking the detailed study of Bhagavad Gita. So I see a lot of you all there. You guys are already introduced to Krishna consciousness in some way or the other. Some people are new, maybe. So anyone here who has no exposure to Bhagavad Gita or is trying to attend such a session for the first time? Anyone like that? Okay.
Yeah, I'm first time reading Bhagavad Gita.
Nice. Welcome. All right. So how we'll do this is we'll first try to understand. I'll just pull up my presentation. Just give me a second. So we will keep it interactive in a sense that wherever you feel you're not understanding something, you can stop me and ask questions, or you can just raise your hand virtually. Or if you're on video, I'll be able to see you. You can raise your hand and you can stop me. So, I don't want to overwhelm you on the first day. There's quite a bit of information here. And so wherever you feel, you've not understood something, or if I'm going too fast, just let me know. I can stop, I can take a pause, and we can spend some time there as well. Okay. So this is Bhagavad Gita, course by Mayapur Institute. Is everyone able to see my screen again? Yes?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes. So we start off with a quick story. So basically, there's a musician by the name Joshua Bell. Not sure how many of you all know him, but quite a famous musician. And this was back in 2007. So Washington Post basically arranged a social experiment. And in this social experiment, what they did was, so Joshua Bell, who's a very, very popular musician, he was actually stationed at the metro station in Washington, D.C. You see this man next to the gate on the left side in black. So that's Joshua Bell. So in this experiment, what he did was he was, playing music at the metro station. He was there incognito, dressed up in regular clothes, and he started playing music. And this is one of the most, world-renowned musicians as such. And he was trying to play some of the best pieces of music that he had ever produced. Especially there were 6 compositions which were, his best work, till 2007. And he was playing those pieces of music on his violin. And there were people passing by. He played for about 30 to 45 minutes. And there were people passing by, just, moving, past him. And nobody was really stopping. In a hurry, it was a metro station. And only after, I think, the 22nd minute, there was a kid who stopped, and, his mother pulled him, very, very quickly, and they ran towards the train. After the 25th minute, there was another kid who actually dragged his mother to where this guy was playing, and they stood for 2 minutes and they left. By the end of the 29th minute, there were about 7 to 8 people who had gathered. And by the end of his performance, which was about 45 minutes, he had collected something like $32. And the same musician, right? He actually had a show 2 days later in the same city. And each ticket was worth $900. So, look at the irony. Here he was playing and nobody was noticing. Only 7 people, right? So the gist is, if we don't have a moment to stop and listen to one of the best musicians in the world playing the best music ever, how many other things are we missing, right? They just happen. Miracles literally happen in front of our eyes, or they're some of the best things are happening in our life, but we miss it because we are too busy running here and there, right? So I should actually congratulate all of you all. You all have taken that time out, right? It's like I was hearing one of my mentors speak. He was describing how if you have to cook halwa, right? Halwa is an Indian sweet. If you have to cook halwa, right? You have to be outside the pan to cook the halwa. You cannot sit inside the pan and cook halwa. Not possible. You have to be outside the pan to cook halwa. So our life, right? If you have to, plan our life or actually make a good dish out of, create something meaningful out of our life, we have to take a pause, take a step back, observe and do things, plan, so that we can actually achieve what we want to achieve, rather than just, running in that rat race. So, and it's really great to see so many of you all here. You all have chosen to take out time to spend time, understand, Bhagavad Gita, which is the message of God, right? Trying to understand, what life is all about. And this is the, very essence of human form of life as such, right? We are different from animals by this quality that we can inquire who we are, why are we here, what is the meaning of life, why am I suffering, all these questions. Scriptures describe those who don't ask this question, they are no better than animals. Dvipad Pashu, 2-legged animals, right? So we've taken that step towards actually being human beings. So that's really amazing. And so good to see all of you all, spending this time to understand Bhagavad Gita. You're interested, and that's really nice. So all that we'll be discussing today will be based on the teachings of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He's the founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So just a few things about Srila Prabhupada before we get into the subject matter of Gita. So Srila Prabhupada is actually a person, who has lived Bhagavad Gita, right? Some people, they, hear Bhagavad Gita. Some people may talk about on Bhagavad Gita. Some people may know Bhagavad Gita back and forth. They may memorize all the shlokas and, remember everything. But how many of us are living Bhagavad Gita? So here's a person who's lived Bhagavad Gita, each and every shloka, right? Even if we are able to live one shloka of Bhagavad Gita, our life is successful, right? So Srila Prabhupada, he, I'll kind of quickly take you through, the life of Srila Prabhupada. So he's the founder Acharya of ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which has created a revolution on this planet, where so many people from all across the globe have, come to understand or, come in contact with Krishna, understand, what is the science of Bhagavad Gita, and they are actually living a life based on the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. So Srila Prabhupada, from a very young age, he was born in a Vaishnava family, and Vaishnavas are devotees of Lord Vishnu. So he was born in a Vaishnava family, and he had training right from his childhood in worshipping the Lord. He was very well educated, and he was born in 1896 during school. And as a young person going to college, he was actually also connected to the Gandhi movement. But then he met his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, who instructed him to preach the message of Lord Chaitanya or Lord Krishna in the Western worlds, or in the English language particularly. So Srila Prabhupada spent a lifetime in preparation. He was a householder. He had a very big pharmacy business, etc. But then, later in his life, he took sannyas and, he was constantly meditating and preparing himself to fulfill the orders of his spiritual master. And to that end, when he was about 70 years old, he actually left India. He struggled a lot in India trying to preach, but then he left India on a cargo ship and on to New York, and on the way he actually suffered 2 heart attacks. Right? Imagine a 70-year-old man, right, with practically nothing. He had just 40 rupees in his pocket. Just think about going on a world tour with 40 rupees in your pocket. just let that, uh, how it would feel really. Right? So with just that and some books, so he was constantly writing books. So he had translated Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto by then, and he was carrying that in the trunk on a cargo ship. Somehow he got a passage on a cargo ship, and from there, when he landed in New York, first of all he landed in Boston Harbor, of course, and he suffered 2 massive heart attacks, and then still somehow he pursued. He landed in Boston Harbor. He did not know whether to go left or right. Right? He knew no one, and he actually reached, I think, somewhere close to the winters, and winters are really harsh in New York. In fact, that year it was one of the harshest winter in New York. So somehow, he survived, and he was on a mission just to fulfill the orders of his spiritual master. And from there on, in the next 11 years, he traveled across the globe, encircled the globe 14 times, created 108 temples and thriving farm communities and schools, etc. Right? Initiated 10,000 disciples, wrote thousands and thousands of letters, and he was constantly traveling. He was also managing all those temples. Those days there was no mobile phone, no internet. Everything used to happen through letters. He was managing through letters. Disciples would write questions to him, letters to him, and he would reply back. And at the same time, he was translating, so many books like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? He translated more than 80 volumes of books. And his schedule was he would just sleep 2 hours a day. He would get up, at night, maybe 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, start translating, and till early morning, 3 or 4, he would translate, then attend Mangalarti, 4:30, and the entire schedule, what set, he would follow that. And he would not be affected by jet lag. No matter which country he landed in, he would follow the same program without any disturbance. Right? So it's something which is humanly impossible, right? And the amount of books he wrote, and he was managing temples. There were disciples, Western disciples, who did not even know some basic things. They would write letters, and Srila Prabhupada would answer them. So this is how he created a worldwide movement, right? And when it came to naming the society, he named it International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He could have easily said International Society for Prabhupada Consciousness, right? Or International Society for God Consciousness. No, but he named it International Society for Krishna Consciousness because he was completely dedicated to serving Lord Sri Krishna and his message. So this is a person who has lived Bhagavad Gita, right? He started with a small storefront, gathered a few people. He was just sitting in a park and chanting, and that's how people got attracted to the chanting. And then he started preaching the message of Bhagavad Gita as well. That's how this whole movement started, right? So yeah. Now let's go to the subject of Bhagavad Gita. So where was Bhagavad Gita spoken? Anyone knows it?
Kurukshetra.
Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Battlefield of sorry?
By Sri Krishna. He told everything to Arjuna during that battle, starting of the battle.
Yes. So anyone knows why Kurukshetra war happened?
For establishment of Dhamma.
Sorry?
For establishment of Dharma.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe one by one. So why did the Battle of Kurukshetra take place? Somebody said before establishment of Dharma, okay. But why did the war happen in the first place?
Kauravas were not ready to do a compromise with Pandavas to give their piece of land.
Right. Yes.
To
So,
speak Bhagavad Gita also, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
so Lord wanted to speak Bhagavad Gita, therefore he organized a war. Right? Okay. Okay, before we get there, fine.
Yeah, because this Vedic knowledge was broken in time of from sun god Vivaswan, and it was broken, and that's why Krishna wanted to reestablish the Bhagavad Gita and make it to give to the people.
Right. So, yes, I mean, those are some internal reasons. What are the external reasons? Why did the war happen? Like somebody said,
Kaurav did injustice with Pandavas, so they want to
right.
resolve the thing. They want to their
Yes.
kingdom, and they want to get back. And because of Draupadi, they misbehaved. So there's a revenge of that also.
So, basically, it was a fight between, brothers of the same family, right? So, one side, there were Pandavas, the 5 brothers. The other side was the Kauravas. They were sons of Dhritarashtra and Pandu, were actually brothers. So Pandu, he died at an early age, and Dhritarashtra, he was blind, so he was not fit for ruling the kingdom. So Pandu was actually given the throne, although Dhritarashtra was elder. But then Pandu died at an early age, and these 5 sons were then dependent on Dhritarashtra. So Dhritarashtra was supposed to actually rule till such time till Yudhishthira Maharaj, who was his eldest son, was old enough to handle the kingdom, and he was also being trained he was being educated at the same time by Dronacharya and his grandfather, and Kripacharya as well. So it was rightfully the kingdom belonged to Yudhishthira Maharaj, but then when they actually grew old enough, instead of giving the kingdom to Yudhishthira, since Dhritarashtra was overly attached to his son, especially Duryodhan, right? So they devised so many plans and means. In fact, Duryodhan, he devised so many plans, along with his uncle as well, to kill the Pandavas, right? Anyone knows what all attempts were done for killing the Pandavas?
He gave
They poisoned
poison to Bhima, and he set fire to the house,
Yes.
and he tried to disturb Draupadi.
Yeah.
And 2 more reasons. That snake bite, I think.
Thunder all just through that game of dice.
Yes. Yes. So scriptures describe that one should not actually for a person who's saying he would obviously not fight and kill his family members, but then scriptures describe that there are atatai. Atatai means aggressors. There are 6 kind of aggressors. You're allowed to kill. They should be killed rather. So I don't remember all of them, but yeah, one who gives poison, one who plunders one's wealth, one who occupies one's land, one who sets fire to the house, one who tries to attack with a deadly weapon, and one who tries to kidnap someone's wife or lure someone's wife away, right? So actually, if you see, all these 6 things were done to Pandavas. All these 6 things were done to Pandavas, and even after that, when and they were actually cheated in the dice match. They were sent to exile for 12 years, and 1 year was Agyatvas, which was very, very difficult. So even after all of this, Yudhishthira Maharaj, he never wanted a war, and rather he actually then tried to claim his throne back. But then the Duryodhan said that I won't give a piece of land where you can drive a pin without war. Krishna himself had gone as a Shanti Dut. Shanti Dut is a peace messenger to convey this message that okay, fine, if you don't want to give the kingdom, at least give 5 villages, because they're Kshatriyas. It's in their nature to do administration and rule. So just give 5 villages. But then Duryodhana was hell bent on having a war. Now the internal reason, which some of you all mentioned, that it's actually Krishna who wanted the war. So actually Duryodhan wanted the war, but then it was Lord's plan as well, because Lord had descended to Duparitranaya sadhuna vinashaya cha dushkrita, to kill all the miscreants. Now, he could have done so by going to every part of the world, individually killing each and every demon, right? Or what he did instead was, arrange a war, gather everyone 18 days and finish. Right? We had 2 world wars. The world has seen 2 world wars previously. And this was also a world war, by the way. There are people from all across the world had come siding either on the side of Pandavas or the Kauravas. So it was a world war. And we know our experience of, or at least our knowledge of the previous 2 world wars, which is recorded in our history. How many civilians were killed, so much destruction of public property. People who never wanted to fight also died, right? Innocent people, women, children were killed, right? That's human intelligence. We are fighting war, and all of this happens. But then look at God's intelligence, right? He's arranged in such a way that people who wanted to fight were on the battlefield 18 days flat. Our world wars lasted for so many years, right? But here 18 days flat, everyone was finished, right? So so that was the that's how Bhagavad Gita was actually then spoken on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. When Arjuna basically was in confusion, and we'll see that that's actually the subject matter of the first chapter, right? So that's the place where Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Imagine instead of having this online session where we are sitting in the comforts of our home, if we would call you at the border of India and Pakistan, or whatever war is going on, maybe at the border of China and Taiwan, right? Where, the active war zone, and right in between where the 2 borders are, there's no man's land. If you're standing there, right, and we invite you there, come please, let's have a Bhagavad Gita class. How many of you all would be interested? So, yes, why would anyone want to go in that danger zone, right? And if you're there, by chance, if you're there, you will not listen to Bhagavad Gita. You will first try to run away from there and see how can I save my life, right? But then Bhagavad Gita was actually spoken on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Imagine both the sides had blown their conch shell. Blowing of the conch shell is almost announcing, let's start the war. You were ready, right, with their weapons, and conch shells were blown. At that point in time, Arjuna asks Krishna, please draw my chariot in the middle of both the armies. I want to see who all have come to please the evil-minded Duryodhana. Whom should I contend with in this great trial of arms? He wanted to see. And his intention was to assess, who's there and, whom all he needs to fight. So just like you would assess the enemy, their strength, etc., he wanted to assess. But then Krishna, he's the master of all mystics and he knows. So he actually drew Arjuna's chariot in the middle of the armies, right in front of Bhishma and Drona. The 2 people who Arjuna, loved dearly and respected, so much. And they were his worshippables. So seeing them, Arjuna, he could not contain himself. And he thought, how can I fight in battle with these people who are my guru, my grandfather, right? They should not even be offered a verbal argument, forget fighting. And, then, we'll see in the first chapter itself how he is explaining some of the symptoms, he was experiencing. So he was under tremendous stress, right? Just completely, overwhelmed with grief and stress. So that's where, Krishna, he asks questions to Krishna and then starts explaining the science of Bhagavad Gita. And by the end of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says, Nashta Mohas, my illusion is gone. Now I know, what to do, right? The darkness of ignorance, etc. He says that I'm completely, free from these anxieties right now, and I'm ready to do what you are asking me to do, okay, Shiva. So just look at the difference, right? In the beginning, he was, completely stressed, full of lamentation, full of anxiety. And towards the end of Bhagavad Gita, he was, completely free from illusion, doubt, and ready to act. So Bhagavad Gita, as such, is a life management book, right? It helps us relieve our stress. You can see from the example of Arjuna. Imagine, you have to kill your family members. How much anxiety and stress that will give you. You cannot imagine, cannot think. If something happens by someone else also, we are so much anxious and we want to fight against somebody who has done anything to our family members. Right? Here, Arjuna is supposed to kill his family members. And they were all like his maternal uncles, his brothers, his grandfather, his cousins. Everyone was there. Right? And he's supposed to kill them. So, that was a situation where Bhagavad Gita was spoken. So that's the history of Bhagavad Gita. Anyone knows, how many verses are there in Bhagavad Gita?
700.
700 verses, yes. And how many chapters there are in Bhagavad Gita?
18.
18.
Chapters, yes. So 18 is a magic number. 18 days of Mahabharata war, 18 days of 18 chapters in Bhagavad Gita, right? And which literature does this appear in?
Mahabharat.
It appears in the
Mahabharat Bhishma Parva.
Parva. Yes. So it appears in the Bhishma Parva. And anyone knows what was the duration in which Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna?
40 minutes.
45 minutes.
45 minutes.
Wow, everyone's expert out here. Yes. So it is said 2 muhurtas. So that's a time between 45 minutes to 1.5 hours, like that. And cause and relevance. So I just explained how, it's actually a stress management or life management handbook. It's a manual given by God on how to live, right? So we are going through stress, and we are going through birth, death, old age, and disease, and so many other things, right? So Bhagavad Gita is a science which is meant for to deliver us from all these things. So no matter 5,000 years ago, 5 million years ago, or even now, we are facing all of those things. So it's relevant today. And the last thing, what is the process of acquiring this knowledge, right? Arjuna, he heard directly from Krishna, right? How do we actually acquire this knowledge?
Spiritual master.
Yes. So basically, Bhagavad Gita is coming in disciplic succession. Krishna, he explains in the 4th chapter that he had passed down this knowledge initially to God, Vivaswan, and from him it was passed down to Manu, and Manu then in turn related to Ishvaku, his son, and that's how in a chain of disciplic succession from spiritual master to disciple, it has been coming down in an unbroken chain of disciplic succession. Right? And therefore, so therefore, if you take knowledge in any of these, sampradayas, we call it in Sanskrit, right? You're sure to have bona fide information. Otherwise, there are a lot of people who comment on Bhagavad Gita. Anyone who wants to become famous, he'll write a commentary on Bhagavad Gita. So, any idea how many commentaries are there on Bhagavad Gita today? Take a guess. How many commentaries of Bhagavad Gita are there in the market today?
That is not predictable, Prabhuji, because everyone is writing the Bhagavad Gita commentary.
Yes. Okay. Anyone else? Any guesses?
I think more than 700, Prabhu.
More than 700. 700 verses for more than 700 commentaries. Okay, so it's more than 1,000 different editions of Bhagavad Gita. So, which one to actually read? How to decide which commentary you should pick up and read? People are writing Bhagavad Gita for political motives, right? Mahatma Gandhi also wrote one. I think Lokmanya Tilak also.
The one which is coming from the disciplic succession, which Prabhupada has given us Bhagavad Gita as it is.
Yes. So there are 4 bona fide sampradayas, right? We can equate them to universities. Right? So just like if I have to go to, if I have to study, maybe say engineering, right? I will actually look for a college which is affiliated to bona fide university. That's the first thing I will check. Then, you will look for other things like teachers or facilities or, curriculum, etc., etc. First thing is whether the college is affiliated to bona fide university or not. Because if it's not affiliated, your degree is not valid, right? So similarly, even the spiritual science you need to learn from bona fide sampradayas, knowledge, and there are 4 primary sampradayas, which is Sri Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, Kumar Sampradaya, and Brahma Sampradaya. So Krishna, he gave the knowledge to Brahmaji, that's Brahma Sampradaya or Brahma Madhva Gaudi Sampradaya right now. He gave knowledge to Lakshmi, that's Sri Sampradaya. He gave knowledge to Kumaras, the 4 Kumaras, sons of Brahma, so that's Kumar Sampradaya. He gave knowledge to Shiva, so that's Rudra Sampradaya, like that. And from there on, they passed on the knowledge to their disciples, like Brahmaji passed on to Narad, Narad passed on to Vyas, like that. And that's how we receive this knowledge in the chain of unbroken disciplic succession, right? And so there are total 5 subject matters discussed in Bhagavad Gita, and you can actually memorize this. Very simple. If anyone asks you what did you learn in Bhagavad Gita, these are the 5 main topics discussed. There are several topics, but yeah, I mean these are the 5 primary topics discussed in Bhagavad Gita. So you can repeat after me. Jiva. Say Jiva.
Jiva.
Ishvara.
Ishvara.
Prakriti.
Prakriti.
Kala. Karma. Jiva, Ishvara, Prakriti, Kal, Karma. These are the 5 subject matter discussed in Bhagavad Gita, right? Bhagavad Gita is also known as Upanishad, right? So Bhagavad Gita is actually the essence of the Vedic knowledge, right? There are 108 Upanishads, out of which the essence of the essence is actually Gita Upanishad. The manual of life, which has solutions to all our problems, both material and spiritual. You can see, how world leaders and famous personalities have appreciated and taken lessons from Bhagavad Gita, and till today it's going on. So before getting into the subject in more detail, let's understand what is the spirit of understanding Bhagavad Gita. What is the qualification? How can we understand Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita actually is an open secret, right? It's open, it's available for everyone, but again, it's a secret. Right? Krishna himself says, Raj Vidya, Raj Guhyam. Guhyam means something which is very, very most confidential, right? So it's a confidential science. It's a secret, but it's an open secret. So how do we understand this? So we spoke about how we understand Bhagavad Gita in the chain of disciplic succession, right? So the first thing to understand Bhagavad Gita, the first premise of understanding Bhagavad Gita is we have to accept, at least theoretically, if someone is not having enough faith, at least theoretically we should accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, disturbance. Can others be on mute unless they have to share something? Okay. All right. So, the first and foremost thing in order to understand Bhagavad Gita is we should accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is like saying that, if I have to read a book, right? Let's say Romeo and Juliet, right? For example. Now, the author, right? Shakespeare, he's writing, and I don't know, I've not read Romeo and Juliet, so please bear with me for those who know. So he's writing that Romeo was, not so well-to-do. Juliet was probably a princess, I don't know. So he's giving the characters and who they are, right? So as per the author, we have to understand, what the topic is, who the characters are. He'll introduce the characters, and then we can understand the whole book or the story that he's trying to convey, right? So if we say no, I will think or I will assume that Shakespeare was a business tycoon, and Juliet was probably somebody from India and working as a call center girl. I don't know, right? So we have to accept, what the author is trying to say, and only then we get the subject matter of the entire book, right? So Krishna, he's the speaker of Bhagavad Gita, right? He himself is saying that I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So even if you don't have complete faith right now, at least theoretically we need to, start with that premise. Otherwise, there will be no meaning to Bhagavad Gita. You won't understand a thing, right? You may memorize it, you may be a scholar, you might write a PhD thesis on it, but you won't understand a single thing about Bhagavad Gita, right? And there are several other proofs actually that how Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? There are all the rishis like Narada, Asita, Devala, Vyasa, all of them are confirming the supremacy of Lord Krishna. Krishna himself has displayed so many wonderful pastimes, superhuman pastimes, which no one can actually replicate. He's shown his universal form. Arjuna is also asking for the sake of all of us, so that if there is anyone who claims to be God, can show his Virat Roop and then claim that he's God. So he actually, Krishna shows his Virat Swarupa in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So there are so many, proofs or indications how, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And for someone who may say, oh, we were not there, what Krishna did, etc., etc. But when you read the scriptures, those historical places are still there. The knowledge which Krishna is giving, if one applies, they can understand how that is, an eternal science, right? Veda scriptures, they describe so many things which, modern science has just caught up on, right? Like the entire, the embryology, say, how the position of the child is in the womb. Everything is described in the scriptures in so much detail. I was speaking to one devotee who's a doctor. He was giving a class one day, and he was describing how, as per science, there is a stage when, when woman conceives, there is a stage between the 4th and the 6th day. There's a stage called bubble formation, right? And he then quoted from scriptures saying that Pancharatrena Buddhita, right? 5th night there is bubble formation. So science is still an approximation, maybe like this, maybe maybe the 4th day, maybe the 6th day. They're not sure, right? But scriptures are so precise, and there are hundreds and hundreds of examples like this. This is just one example, right? There are so many examples. Scriptures is filled with eternal science. Veda, the word Veda literally means all knowledge, and you'll find knowledge about history, geography, biology, chemistry, physics, everything there. Astronomy, astrology, everything, right? I was just going through, some of the classes on the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes the cosmology, and it's so accurate, so accurate. It actually matches with all the different recent discoveries of science, right? This was mentioned thousands of years ago, and science has just caught up to it, right? So it's actually a science, right? What Krishna is speaking. How can someone, who's not God, speak all these things, or give all this information which is true and true for so many years to come? It's eternal, actually. Also have those historical places, etc. So there should not be actually doubt. Somebody who's with logical reasoning and intelligence can understand that actually Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and everyone is confirming that, right? All the scriptures are confirming this as well. So we'll see later on step by step how, but Brahmaji here, he talks about how Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. He says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karana. Right? Krishna is the primeval Lord. His form is Sachid Anand, right? Made of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Anadiradir Govinda. He has no beginning, right? He's beginningless. And he's the beginning of all everything. He's the source of everything. Sarva Karana Karana. He's the cause of all causes. Right? That's God. Right? He's beyond the purview of time, and therefore he has no beginning. So who can understand Bhagavad Gita? Krishna says, Bhaktya Mam Avijanati Yavanyas. So he's saying one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord by such devotion, he can enter the kingdom of God. So if okay, let's take an example. I'm not able to see here. Sorry. Okay, Ankur Jain. I can see one person by the name Ankur Jain. Ankur Jain, are you there? You can unmute yourself quickly. Hare Krishna. Okay, so Ankur, if tell me, if I want to know about you, who's the best person to tell me about you? The best person to tell me about myself. Your voice is breaking.
My mother.
Your mother. Okay, so it will be either yourself or your mother or your immediate, very very dear friends or relatives, who know you very well, right? So in the same way, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, right? He's the master of all mystics. To know God, to understand Him, it's not an easy task. So the best person to tell about himself is Krishna himself, and therefore he comes and gives Bhagavad Gita so that we can understand, right? And apart from that, he has so many devotees who have also described and spoken about him, about his nature, about his dealings with his different devotees. And that's really the essence of Bhagavad Gita, the dealings and interactions of Krishna with his devotees, right? The exchange, the loving exchanges, that's the essence of Bhagavad Gita, right? And we'll come to that later, of course. So either Krishna or his devotees, right? So Krishna is saying, what is the qualification? You have to be my devotee, right? Only a devotee can understand. Someone who knows you, who loves you, can understand, how you are, who you are, etc. Right? So if we hear from a devotee, then we can understand Bhagavad Gita. Or like here we are taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada. He's giving his Bhaktivedanta purports and explaining, the science of Bhagavad Gita to us. So and this we also see in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, right? Before the battle, it was Dharma Yuddha actually. So before the battle began, there were some rules set of how to engage in the battle. So it was declared that everyone have to choose sides, right? Only before the battle. Once the battle starts, you cannot switch sides. So this was one of the rules. So everyone was trying to recruit, right? Duryodhana was very aggressively trying to recruit as many members as possible, right? Anyone knows, how many people, or what was the size of the armies on the Kauravas side and the Pandavas side? Anyone knows? Okay, so there were in total 18 Akshauni Senas, right? Akshauni is a phalanx of some horses, some people on elephants, some infantry, etc. So that's a group called one Akshauni. So like that, there were 18 Akshauni armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, 11 on the side of Kauravas, and 7 on the side of Pandavas. So clearly, there were more people on the side of Duryodhana. So before that, Duryodhana wanted to recruit as many people as possible. And, both of them, Arjuna and Duryodhana, they actually approached Krishna one morning in order to, get, the armies on their side. So Krishna was sleeping. He was lying on the bed. You can see in the picture, he was lying on the bed. And Duryodhana, he actually entered first and he sat next to the head of Krishna. So he thought, when Krishna wakes up, I'll immediately ask him for his Narayani Sena. So Krishna had his Narayani Sena, which was very, very powerful. And Arjuna also came, to request Krishna to be on his side. So he sat at his lotus feet. So when Krishna, he opened his eyes, he saw Arjuna at first, and then he turned and he looked at Duryodhana. So, Krishna said, okay, before you ask me, let me tell you one thing that, to choose sides, one side will be my Narayani Sena, and the other side I will be personally present, right? And I won't be carrying any weapons. I won't be lifting any weapons. So Duryodhana internally thought, what is the use of Krishna, right? his Narayani Sena is so huge and there's only one Krishna here. And also, he's not going to lift any weapons. So what is the use of having Krishna? He really, really wanted the Narayani Sena actually. And then Arjuna, he wanted Krishna. So, Duryodhan said, and he was very, very anxious. He thought if Arjuna is given the chance, he might ask Narayani Sena and what will happen. So he wanted to ask Krishna first. Like, Krishna, I want to ask. Krishna stopped him. He said, no, actually, Arjuna is here first. So no, I came first. So Krishna said, okay, but when I opened my eyes, I saw Arjuna first. And since he's younger to you, should give him a chance to go first and, put his request first. So Arjuna, he said, oh, okay, Shiva, I want you on my side, right? Without even thinking twice, he said, I want you on my side. And, internally, Duryodhana was dancing in joy. He was like, wow. He was so much in anxiety. But then as soon as Arjuna said, I want Krishna, he was dancing internally in joy, thinking that, how foolish Arjuna is. I got, so many thousands and thousands of soldiers in the form of Narayani Sena, which is so powerful, actually. So he was happy, but he showed, oh, okay, fine. Arjuna, you took Krishna, then I'm just left with Narayani Sena, what to do. Okay. Like that, he left. And then Krishna turned to Arjuna, why did you do that? Right? So Arjuna said, I want you by my side. I know nothing else. Right? So you see, the devotees, they are in love with God unconditionally. They want Krishna unconditionally, right? No matter what. Whereas people like Duryodhan, right? Demoniac, they want to enjoy the Lord's energy. They don't want the Lord. They want Lord's energy. Whereas the devotees, they want the Lord. Right? That's the difference. We want to enjoy Krishna's energy minus Krishna. Right? It should be my brain or my desire and Lord should fulfill. That's the demoniac mentality. Right? Unfortunately, we all have it. Right? But what is the devotee's mentality? Devotee's mentality is that Krishna's desire should be my desire. Right? What the Lord wants, I should actually be in unison or in unity with that. Right? So that's the mood of unalloyed devotees. And we can understand Bhagavad Gita the way Arjuna understood. Why? Because he was a dear devotee and a friend and non-envious to Krishna. Right? So being associate of Lord, Arjuna was actually put into ignorance. Arjuna actually was a very, very learned scholar. And he was being devotee of the Lord. He was completely self-realized. But then he was purposely put into ignorance on the battlefield of Kurukshetra so that he can actually put those questions to Krishna. And through the medium of Arjuna, right, Krishna could explain to all of us the science of Bhagavad Gita. Just like, you have these washing powder ads. They will actually pick up a, cloth which is complete. They will actually throw dirt, mud, oil and so many things, right? And then, they'll show the packet of the powder, put it in the bucket, and then dip this dirty shirt, and then it comes out sparkling white, right? So they took their own shirt, soiled it, and then washed it and, showed the clean shirt. So this is what Lord is doing also. He's taking his own devotee, putting him in so many difficulties and problems, anxiety, fear, and all of that, right? And then washing him in the science of Bhagavad Gita, and then, Arjuna comes out to be completely pure and clean and clearly focused on what to do, right? This is how Krishna is, teaching us through the medium of Arjuna. So, this is the spirit of Bhagavad Gita. We have to understand Bhagavad Gita just the way Arjuna did, right? Accepting Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He surrendered to Krishna, right? Okay, can someone mute? There is some. Yeah. So, sorry, we'll go 10 more minutes maybe. Is that okay with everyone? Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Okay.
For me, it's okay.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Right. So, yeah. So Arjuna was actually, when he saw Bhishma and Drona in front of his eyes, right? He was completely shattered. he describes, oh Krishna, my, I have lost all composure, right? My mind is reeling, my skin is burning, right? So many symptoms of complete stress and anxiety, right? And we'll see that in further shlokas. So this chapter is also known as Arjuna Vishada Yoga, right? So Arjuna's lamentation, actually, and proper titles is Observing the Armies in the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. So we'll see how this chapter goes. So it's a quick structure of the chapter. So it starts with, Dhritarashtra inquiring from Sanjay, what is happening on the battlefield. So Sanjay is actually a disciple of Sri Vyasdev, and by the mercy of Vyasdev, he had a divine vision where he could see whatever was happening on the battlefield, and he was relating that to Dhritarashtra, who was sitting in the palace. So yeah, and then we see how Duryodhan is actually describing, the armies on Pandava's side and then the armies on his side. He's very, very diplomatic in his behavior. And, Arjuna then asking Krishna to take the chariot in the middle of the two armies to assess, the enemy. And then when he sees Bhishma and Drona, he is completely in lamentation and anxiety. And then he gives very, very powerful reasons for not fighting. So that's the overall structure of the entire chapter. We'll go a little fast because already 9:06. This is the very first shloka of Bhagavad Gita, right? Maybe we can chant. So I'll chant one line, you can repeat. So at least the first verse is something you should memorize for sure, right? Dhritarashtra uvacha. You can chant.
Dhritarashtra uvacha
Vacha.
Dharma kshetre kurukshetre.
Dharmashetra Kurukshetra
Samaveta yuyutsavaha.
Samaveta
Yudhava.
Mamaka pandavaschaiva.
Mamaka Pandava
Kim akurvata Sanjaya.
Sanjaya.
It's very, very significant. So, Dhritarashtra is asking, Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra, Samaveta Yutsa. My sons and sons of Pandu assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. What did they do? Right? So, I mean, just think how, weird question this is. If someone puts a plate of prasadam or food in front of you, what will you do? Eat it, right? That's so obvious. So there are two armies ready on the battlefield to fight, and this inquiry, what did they do, right? It sounds very, vague, but actually it's very, very significant, because here there are several parts of this inquiry, right? So Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. So first of all, this area known as Kurukshetra is actually a holy place, right? So the ancestors of Dhritarashtra, Maharaj Kuru, he performed, a lot of sacrifices and a lot of austerities on this place. And he had actually, the Supreme Personality, he appeared to him and gave him benediction that since you've performed, he gave him several benedictions, and one of them was, since you've performed so many austerities and sacrifices in this particular place, anyone leaving their body in this place will attain Swarga for sure, heaven, right? So, and since this was a holy place, Dhritarashtra was afraid that this might favor the Pandavas. Just like, when there is a cricket match, they assess the pitch, right? Is it soggy? Is it dry? Etc., etc. And whether it's a home ground, so there is an advantage. Whether it's in India, okay, the home ground advantage, the team will have, great practice already on the ground, etc. So it's something similar. So Dhritarashtra is afraid that, the holy place will favor the Pandavas, who are very, very righteous, right? And he knew, they were fighting on the wrong side. So he was kind of very anxious for his sons. So therefore, Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra, he's addressing this place as Dharma Kshetra, right? Mamaka Pandavas Chaiva. So although Pandavas and Kauravas were both under the care of Dhritarashtra, since they were young, right? He should ideally not have distinguished between them. But here we see he's clearly distinguishing that my sons and sons of Pandu, right? So he's, saying that these guys separate, right? Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. right? What did they do? And he was afraid of the outcome of the battle, and particularly because also Krishna was present on the side of Arjuna. And wherever there is Krishna, there is victory, there is Shri, right? There is opulence, and there is morality, right? So already it was kind of predicted. and Dhritarashtra was also anxious that there should not be any compromise between the two parties, right? Because earlier there was attempts of, peacemaking, but then all of that had failed. But he also wanted, that nothing should actually happen even now, and the war should actually go on like that. Then he says Pashyatam Panduputranam Acharyam Mahatim. So here Sanjaya then starts relating what is happening on the battlefield, and he says how Duryodhan has actually approached his teacher Dronacharya, right? And he starts speaking. So what he speaks: "Oh my teacher, behold the great army of sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada." So he's specifically mentioning Drupada, right? Son of Drupada. Why? Because who's the son of Drupada? Anyone?
Drishtadumna, Prabhuji.
Drishtadumna.
So he's mentioning this because actually Drishtadumna was a personality who was begotten by Drupada from a yagya, and he was specifically produced to kill Dronacharya. And Dronacharya, being a very liberal Brahmin, so Drishtadumna actually had approached Dronacharya only to train him in military science. And being a liberal Brahmin, he knew this person has been created just to kill me. But being a liberal Brahmin, he actually instructed and gave all sciences, military sciences to him, right? So here, Duryodhana is almost trying to taunt, his teacher that, look, this great army of Pandavas so nicely and expertly arranged by Drupada, son of Drupada, right? And of course, there is another history also, which I won't get into. It's already 9/11. So he's kind of trying to incite the anger of Dronacharya, because on battlefield, anger is required to fight, with full vigor. And then I think then he goes on to describe different generals and like Arjuna, Bhima, etc., and other people in the army of Pandavas from Shloka 1.4 onwards. And so just so that his men are not discouraged, right? He's praising the enemy so that people are vigilant on his side, and they are alert. And he then goes on to praise Bhishma, right? And he says that in front of Bhishma, our strength is immeasurable because we are protected by Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas is limited because they are just protected by Bhima, who's a fig in comparison to Bhishma. And the shloka says aparyaptam, right? Aparyaptam means it means, it has two meanings. One is it's unlimited, and the other is it's not sufficient. So actually, Duryodhana almost predicted the outcome of the battlefield, that it won't be sufficient even though Bhishma is on their side. So this description of people on both sides were done, where he was praising the opponent, and then he kind of also praised his general, so that people are not demotivated completely but are alert enough to kind of fight, right? So very, very diplomatically he kind of did this, right? If you have ever I don't know how many of you all must have experienced this. If you visited India, or people who are staying in India, or even other places, I think this would have happened. When you probably get out of an airport or maybe a railway station, and then there are these cab drivers or rickshaw drivers who are, very eager. Arey, come, give me your bags, right? They're extremely eager to take away your bags and, invite. They appear very welcoming. They appear very, very welcoming. How many of you all would actually sit in their cab or sit in their rickshaw? Have you experienced this, first of all? Those who have experienced, yes, Rati.
Yes.
Yes.
Would you actually go in that cab? Would you take that cab?
I didn't get the question.
The question is, if you
Yeah, I understood, like you come out of the airport and then you see the taxi drivers who call you, and then what was then?
Yeah. So there are 4 or 5 of taxi drivers approaching you, and they're very eager, to take your bag and take you in their cab, right? Have you experienced this ever?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you feel about getting in that cab? Or would you get in that cab or maybe take somebody else?
No, those who are approaching lovingly, we would like to go there, no, usually.
He'll do some initial evaluation.
Yes.
No, Prabhuji, sometimes it depends upon the person, how he's
Yes.
looking
Yeah,
and
that-
how he's approaching.
Yes. Yes. So typically those who are like really, really inviting, we at least I tend to think that kuch to gadbad hai. There is something wrong. Probably they're trying to charge me more or something, and I would typically avoid them and go ahead and find something else, and generally it turns out to be cheaper. So you can understand, and like somebody rightly said, you need to see how they're approaching and what is the mood. So externally they may put up a show that they're very, very welcoming, etc. But internally the intention is they want to cheat you or maybe charge you more, etc., right? So similarly here, Duryodhan externally is materially is very, very sound in his intelligence. He's planning and strategizing, right? But internally the intention is right, he's afraid, and particularly he was very, very afraid of Bhima. Therefore he's mentioning him also, because Bhima, he had actually sworn that he will personally kill each and every single Kaurav, right, by his own hand. So he was particularly afraid of Bhima. And in some of the shlokas, he also mentions his brother Vikarna. He was the only person who had objected the disrobing of Draupadi, and he was mentioned among some very, very big generals in the army of Duryodhan when he was praising his own army. So again, that was a diplomacy, so that he is also appreciated, and he also fights and doesn't turn away from the fight like that. So he's very, very diplomatic, but filled with fear essentially. And then so Bhishma, he blew the conch shell, just to give pleasure to Duryodhan, just to keep up his spirits. Okay, fine, I'll blow the conch shell. don't be morose like that. And on the other side, the Arjuna, Krishna, they also blew their conch shells, and it was vibrating in the entire sky, and it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra, right? They were filled with fear. And then we also go on to see from Shloka 20th onwards that how there were so many signs of victory already present, on the side of the Pandavas. So it was Dharma Kshetra, it was Kurukshetra, already described as a holy place. Then Arjuna's chariot was a divine chariot, actually donated by Agni, right? And on top of the chariot was the flag marked with Hanuman. So Hanuman, there is an entire pastime. It's a long one. I won't get there, but there was an entire pastime where Bhima met Hanuman, right? And Hanuman, he gave him a benediction that I will be present in the battlefield of Kurukshetra on top of Arjuna's chariot in the flag. And whenever you roar, I will be roaring along with you, right? So Bhima, he used to actually he used to roar, and just by his roaring, the soldiers they would flee away. They would pee in their pants just by his roar, right? And imagine Hanumanji's roar was mixed with it, through this benediction. And there were divine weapons given by Indra and so many others, Lord Shiva to Arjuna. And wherever there is Krishna, there is Shri, there is goddess of fortune. So Krishna is personally present, and goddess of fortune is also present. So there were so many signs of victory with Arjuna or with the Pandavas, right? And Arjuna was such a great warrior. In the Virat Yudh, he had actually defeated all of these people single-handedly without any army, right? So he was so expert. But like I described, when Krishna takes the chariot in between Bhishma and Drona, he starts lamenting. And he says, Krishna, my Gandiva is slipping from my hand, right? Arjuna had taken a vow. If anyone asks him to put down his Gandhi, he would actually kill that person. And there was an episode earlier where, again, I won't describe the full because of lack of time, but there was an episode where Yudhishthir Maharaj had asked, you should give up your Gandhi. And to fulfill his promise, Arjuna was ready to kill him, right? And then Krishna, he mediated, and he said, you insult Yudhishthir Maharaj, say insulting words, because that is as good as death for a respectable man. right? So Arjuna started insulting, and then, you know, it was as good as death. And then he, you know, fell at feet of Yudhishthira Maharaj. So that's how he kept his promise also, and mitigated the situation. So here, but he is describing that this Gandhi is slipping off my hand. Right? So he was in great lamentation, and he gives 5 very, very powerful reasons for not fighting. Right? This is so the first thing he says, compassion. Like, so many people will die, right? So much massacre, right? There were almost like 84 crore people, or 64 crore people on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, right? So it was huge. So many people, so many families will be without fathers, will be widows, etc. So out of compassion, right? You know, why so much killing just for making us the king? So he never wanted that. And then he said, even if we win the kingdom, we won't be able to enjoy it. Normally you enjoy, you know, with your own family members. If the family is not there, whom will you enjoy with? So even after winning the kingdom, no enjoyment, right? And then the third reason is sinful reactions. So many people killed, so much sin, right? We'll be overcome with sin. How can we enjoy anything tainted with blood, right? There'll be sinful reactions. And then he talks about Varanashankara. Varanashankara is, destruction of family tradition. So all the Kshatriyas were there on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And the people who were, you know, either the lower class or people who were quote unquote Kshatriyas but were cowards, did not come to the battle, right? They were left behind. And women were left behind, the children, or, you know, in general, women were left behind. So he said, if all the Kshatriyas are killed, the traditions won't be followed, you know, they won't be educated, and there'll be Varanashankara, unwanted progeny will be produced, right? Who won't be offering obeisances to the forefathers, the forefathers will fall from the Pitraloka, etc. So entire family will be destroyed, and those who destroy family, they are neither happy in this world nor in the next. So whole society will be completely destroyed. All the welfare activities and projects will be stopped, etc. So he was actually forcing, and such intelligent arguments he was putting. And finally, in the second chapter, he says, so this is almost the end of the first chapter, he's giving these arguments. And in the second chapter, he again says, I'm completely confused. He was indecisive. I don't know what is better, being killed by them or killing them. I don't know what is better. So I'm completely confused. And he surrenders to Krishna. And that's where the second chapter starts. And we'll see that the next week. So I'll stop here. It's already 9:22. If there are any questions, comments, or reflections, the floor is open for you to ask or share.
Prabhuji, as you told that this Bhagavad Gita has answers to all the questions of life. So Arjuna was waging a war for his kingdom. Like we also wage war for various situations in life. So the 5 things you told, we also how we relate in our life, like compassion, indecisiveness, and compassion, and that sinful reaction. Suppose I am in business, I know that my competitor is doing wrong, but if I don't do some wrong, I won't be able to fulfill my conditional duty and earn. So that guilt and a compassion towards human being, that he's, suppose my competitor who is very low in education, he's earning very less. Suppose I take his business, then it will be not good for me because he has no other means to earn. So how we relate all this into our life, I find it very difficult practicing a spiritual life.
Yeah. So first of all, I think there are 2 things I would like to answer in 2 different ways. One is first, I believe there is a commentary by someone who describes how, you know, this war never happened, but this is actually our life. Mahabharata is our life, and 5 senses are 5 Pandavas, etc., and how, you know, we are waging a war. So that is, not a authorized commentary. Just if you're drawing from there, that's one. And I'll come to the answer of what you asked, but just to touch upon this. So there are many commentators who are commenting like this, right? But we have to see Bhagavad Gita as it is. the essence of Bhagavad Gita, the spirit of Bhagavad Gita is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita itself, right? And we have to take those words as it is and not try to imagine that, okay, this is like a, what you can say, metaphor, and actually, it's my life which is being described. No. Arjuna was actually in that situation. All those, the Kurukshetra is still there in India. You can go and visit there. The land is actually red. The dust is red because of the dirt. There's the banyan tree where Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna is still there. So it's not that it was not, it is a metaphor. It's not a metaphor. It's actually happened, right? And Krishna is teaching this science to us so that in our life in different situations, we can apply this knowledge. And coming to your question, how do I apply this compassion, etc., etc. So again, for business, for somebody who's doing business, Vaishyas, right? There were Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So Vaishyas, they're allowed to lie to a certain extent, of course, and not to harm too much someone. But because if they don't lie, they won't be able to make business, right? So somebody is selling you something, they'll have to say, oh, this is the lowest I can go. I'm actually giving you for the cost price, etc. They may say that. And they're allowed. They're allowed to say that because otherwise they won't earn money, right? So in business, you are allowed to do, to a certain extent. Of course, there also we have to have certain ethics. Not that, we are envious of someone and we want to pull down someone and destroy somebody's business, etc. No. How much ever you can do to earn a fair means of income, you do that. And of course, you can lie to a certain extent, but yeah, you should not really, destroy someone else's life trying to make your own. That's what I would say. Yeah. Is that okay? Anyone wants to add to this, or feel free. Yeah. There are so many seniors, I guess, also in the class somehow. So yeah. Is that okay, Radhikapati Prabhu? Okay. Any other thoughts or questions?
Prabhuji, can you introduce yourself?
Oh, okay. My name is Vijay Madhav Das, and materially I am, working as a design director for a design firm here in India. It's called Huge Designs, and basically, I've been practicing Krishna consciousness since 1998. It's been 2 decades, a little bit more than 2 decades. I'm an initiated disciple of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, and by Krishna's special arrangement and mercy, I've been given this opportunity to speak to you all. So I'll be there with you all for the next 3 or 4 classes. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Any other questions or thoughts?
Prabhuji, can we get a PPT of your presentation?
Sure. What we can do, okay, maybe in the end I can, at the end of the 4 days, 4 Sundays, I will share them together because that'll be easier. Yeah. Is that okay?
If you send it today, we will revise it because today is Sunday.
Okay, I'll try to share it. I'll have to figure how to do that. So, but I'll try and do that. Okay.
At least some summary, Prabhuji, so that we can revise. We can read the chapter once and with your notes.
Sure, I think you can. Yes, sure. You can utilize the week to go through. I hope everyone here has a copy of Bhagavad Gita as it is by Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, great. So I would request you all to actually go through the verses, the first chapter is not having a lot of verses, just 42, I think. So, or 44 rather. So just go through the verses and, the translations. If you can read the purport, great. Otherwise, at least just go through the verses and translation at least throughout the week. So you again have a good overview, and I'll also share this PPT out. Maybe if not tonight, I can at least share it tomorrow morning, if that's okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other doubts or questions or comments?
Prabhuji,
Yeah, so just wanted to know, we all know this is a book of life. So, how is this going to, or how can this help to any students' life?
For student, okay. So I think not just students, for everyone, but particularly since you mentioned that, I had this question from someone who was a student. I was doing a session in Bhagavad Gita, and he was describing how he has a problem to focus. Right, he wanted to study, and he had a problem of focusing and trying to study. So I basically asked him, what his routine is and what all things he does. So he described how he's into so many hobbies like sports and going outdoors and different things he would do throughout the year, and he was working as well. So I asked him, when do you get time to study? So he said that I actually take a sabbatical for 2 months before my exams, and I sit down and study for those 2 months. So I said, okay, then what's the problem? He said, that's the problem, those 2 months I'm not able to focus. Right. So what Bhagavad Gita describes is also how to control your mind, right? And Krishna says abhyas and vairagya, right? We'll come to those sections as well as we move ahead. He says abhyas and vairagya is practicing suitable detachment and practices, right? You'll be able to control the mind. So if you can control the mind, right, you can control the input of the mind, then you'll be able to easily focus on your studies. You'll be able to, and of course, at the end of the day, when you give the exam or you're preparing for the exam, there's a lot of stress. There's people, I mean, I don't know about if you all have heard or not, but there are so many students every year they commit suicide out of pressure, right? Pressure of doing well in the exams. Somebody not getting 90 will jump off the cliff. I don't know. That's yeah. So unfortunately, there are episodes like this that happen. So Bhagavad Gita essentially helps us to de-stress. At the very least, I would say, right? It gives us so much more, but at the very least, it helps you to be free from stress, right? Which we all face. Is that okay? Yes, Abhay Prabhu, is that okay?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Yes, thank you.
Yes, Ganesh Prabhuji.
Namaste. My question was on indecisiveness, which is one of the biggest problems I'm facing.
Yes.
Okay. Although many of us are used to the decision-making techniques like brainstorming or the NGT, the nominal group technique, and so on. But when we try to process the brainstorming and throw the question to others, there are two things which happen. Either we look like an idiot in front of others, or like it doesn't come up with a solution. So my problem of indecisiveness in certain areas where a crucial decision is required, will I be able to get a solution out of Bhagavad Gita?
Yes, for sure. It'll help you. It'll give you. So basically, what happens is, and along with Bhagavad Gita, right? So what Bhagavad Gita recommends, right, is Krishna says, surrender unto me, and that'll come later, of course. He says, Sarva Dharman Pradijam Amekam Sharanam Vraja. When you surrender to Krishna, what happens? When you chant Krishna's names, what happens? Right? So our problems, they're like skyscrapers sometimes, like such complicated big problems. It looks like you're surrounded by skyscrapers. These problems are like so huge, like mountains, like skyscrapers, and you're a tiny person right in the middle of it. You don't know how to cross over it, right? So when you chant the names of God, when you chant names of Krishna, or when you read Bhagavad Gita, right, what it does is it actually lifts your consciousness. It's just like in this situation where you are seeing these tall skyscrapers, a helicopter comes and lifts you way above in the sky, right? All those tall buildings look like tiny matchboxes, right? So even Einstein, he mentioned that how you cannot solve a problem from the same plane of consciousness which created that problem. So Bhagavad Gita actually takes you to another dimension, and from that view, you can easily cross over the problems. That's what happens. It lifts your consciousness, right? Something which is very, very complicated becomes simple. that okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
There are so many scientific discoveries, right, which has happened, and I think you must have heard of this mathematician Ramanujan, right? One of the greatest mathematicians of all time, right? He actually describes in his book that actually Goddess Lakshmi would come and give him those theorems which he actually created. He is known as a person who knows infinity, and he's given a formula. He was just giving, the theorems and formulas. He said, I am not wasting time in proving them because coming from Goddess Lakshmi directly. So, and he had full faith. And now there are other mathematicians who are actually finding proofs and validating what Ramanujan said, right? So he says, if you add on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and goes on to infinity, the sum of all that, including infinity, equals to minus 1 by 12. How it is, nobody knew. It was a very recent, I think, discovery by some mathematicians. They have actually proven it. And there are so many theorems like that, right? It's coming from a different plane altogether. Yes, any other thoughts or questions?
Prabhuji, does chanting help in understanding Bhagavad Gita better?
Yes, for sure. Krishna is saying, Bhaktya Mama Vijanati. So one who tries to be a devotee of the Lord, right? And one of the main angas of devotion is to actually chant the holy names of Krishna with faith, right? So if you do that, for sure, you will be, unraveling the science of Bhagavad Gita faster.
Suppose I chant during the days I learn Bhagavad Gita 1 year or 2, I chant 16 rounds, 20 rounds daily attentively. Then after learning Bhagavad Gita, I leave chanting. Then will I forget Bhagavad Gita? Just asking.
So the idea is not to memorize it, right? One should attempt to memorize as much as possible, and so that you can actually remember, right? And in fact, I would strongly recommend, throughout this entire series of classes, you should have a notebook and pen, because Kaliga memory means writing, right? If you write, even if you don't refer back to your book since you've written it, right? You should put that effort there. There are higher chances of you retaining that in your memory. Of course, you won't be remembering everything. And there's a nice example that is given. So there was this small boy who also asked the same question: what is the use of reading Bhagavad Gita every day? I don't remember anything. I'm not able to remember everything. So what is the use? So his father, he said, his grandfather, he said, actually, okay, take this coal basket to the river and get me some water. So this was, a basket made of straw, right? So he thought, hey, how is it possible? But he still went and tried to fill it with water. And the minute he would come out, in no time, all the water would drain out, right? And then he would go to his grandfather, hey, grandfather, I told you, I won't be able to get water. No, go again. And he went on and on, back and forth like this several times. And ultimately the boy was frustrated. But grandfather, I'm not able to retain anything here. There's no water. What is the point of me doing this? So the grandfather then pointed out, just look at this basket. When you first picked it up, it was completely black, jet black, with all the coal. Look at it now. It is completely clean, right? So this is what will happen to our consciousness. Our consciousness, by repeatedly chanting the shlokas or reading, our consciousness will be cleansed. Right? Yes, Satyaraj Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, how do you focus better on your chanting? Because I'm having trouble with focusing while chanting. So do you have any tips on how I could focus while chanting?
So I think there are a few things you can do. Again, at the end of the day, it's practice, but there are a few things which you can arrange for yourself for sure. One is to get up early in the morning and do it at a time where nobody else is disturbing you. You don't have phone calls to attend or your friends calling, etc. So do it at a time where you are more peaceful. Externally, I mean, that you don't have immediate responsibilities to take care of. So typically devotees, they get up early in the morning. That's the first thing they do is sit and chant their rounds. So that really helps. You chant in association of other devotees so that you feel inspired. If you're sleepy, you look at others, how nicely they're chanting, you feel inspired, and you also can chant with enthusiasm, right? Also, you can follow certain things where you eat light the previous night so you don't feel sleepy while chanting the next day morning. You can probably fix a time. I think that will also help, right? If you fix a time, that this is my time, and you tell everyone, don't disturb me during this time. And you also don't do anything else at that time. Keep away your phone, keep away everything else, and then just sit and spend the time with Krishna. That's your exclusive time with Krishna. So I think that will also help.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Wonderful class, Prabhu, overall. Thank you.
All right. It's 9:40, so I think we'll officially end here. I'm still around if someone wants to ask questions, but I don't want everyone else to keep waiting. So we'll officially end here. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.